Our story kicks off with Mi-jong, who heads out for a bowling night with her work colleagues. She's juggling messages to her siblings, letting them know she'll be late. But things take a turn when her boss makes a snide comment about her living situation, suggesting she move closer to Seoul. Ouch. Next, we see her meeting up with her sister Gi-jong for some barbecue. Now this dinner gets spicy, figuratively and literally, when Gi-jong starts trash-talking a guy named Tai-hoo who just happens to be sitting right next to them. Talk about bad luck. Gi-jong's embarrassment is palpable, and they quickly make their exit. But before they go, Tae-hoo drops a bombshell, saying that while he probably should have gotten divorced, getting married was worth it because of his daughter. This moment highlights some serious emotional depth and sets the tone for the connections we'll see later on. Now let's talk about their brother, Chang Hee. He's had a rough night himself, getting into a heated argument with his girlfriend, which ends in a breakup. The siblings all pile into a taxi back to Sangpo. Bet that ride wasn't cheap. As we move through the quiet streets of Sangpo, we get a glimpse of their mundane lives. Mijong and her siblings are grappling with feelings of being stuck in this small town, dreaming of the vibrant city life in Seoul. But it's Mijong who feels the most conflicted, struggling to fit in both at work and in her personal life. At work, things get tough. Mijong overhears her colleagues calling her bland and boring. It's heartbreaking. She wonders if everything would be different if they all lived in Seoul. Meanwhile, there's a recurring theme about marriage being their ticket out of their mundane lives, something both Gijong and Chang-hee grapple with. Things escalate when Mijong gets a distressing message from the bank. She's 5 days late on her credit payment, racking up a staggering loan balance of 1.5 million won a month. The worry on her face says it all. This could change everything for her. In a bid to keep her family in the dark about her financial troubles, Mijong turns to her neighbor, Mr. Gu, asking him to pick up her mail. It's a small but telling moment that illustrates her desire to keep her life together even as it unravels. In the blistering heat of a summer day, we find Jae-ho and Hye-suk busy at work while the world around them buzzes with life. Meanwhile, Mr. Gu waits impatiently for the postman, intent on intercepting a letter from Mi Jong. When he finally snags it, he realizes it's from the bank. After a moment's hesitation, he tosses it into his cupboard. What secrets might it hold? Our heroine, Mi Jong, finishes her shift only to miss the last bus home. We're left to wonder, does she walk it or catch a later ride? Regardless, she eventually makes it back to Sangpo, where she learns about the ominous letter. As the sun sets, Gijong trudges home, disheartened by the darkness already creeping in by dinner time. She, like her sister, feels the weight of isolation pressing down on her. At work, Mijong finds herself seated with the so-called club rejects, a collection of oddballs, including the brooding Tai-Hu. They share their stories of rejection, revealing that, just like school, life can feel like a relentless popularity contest. Park Sang-min laments this uncomfortable truth as their lunch devolves into a therapy session for the overlooked. Meanwhile, Gi Jong's day is filled with cold calls, a new project spurred by a politician's controversial comments about youth. She's torn, frustrated by her boss's flirting with co-workers while she remains in the shadows, wishing for attention. That evening, Gijong vents to Chang Hee and his friends, who can't help but tease her about her lack of romantic interest from her boss. But as her friends arrive, the conversation takes a turn. Hyune reveals she plans to break up with her boyfriend after his impractical decision to buy a single bed. The implications hit hard. How can he be serious about their future? In the midst of all this drama, Gijong craves something deeper. Real connection. It's not just about romance, it's about feeling valued and loved. Her heart aches, not for lust, but for genuine companionship. Mi Jong's troubles run even deeper. She's lent money to Chan Hyuk, who has now vanished with his ex-girlfriend, leaving her feeling like a fool. The weight of her choices crushes her as she rides home. Upon returning, Mi Jong is met with a shocking sight. Mr. Gu bloodied and disoriented. Their parents chalk it up to drunken clumsiness, but Mi Jong can't shake the feeling that it's connected to her own spiraling life. As the pressures mount, Mi-jong reaches her breaking point, collapsing into tears at work. The grind of daily life has become unbearable. Offered a chance to join a new recital club, she declines, teetering on the edge of despair. That night, in a moment of vulnerability, Mi-jong confesses to Mr. Gu that her life feels like a chaotic mess. In a desperate plea, she demands, "Love isn't enough. Worship me." What does this mean for their relationship? Mr. Gu is left pondering the weight of her words as he seeks to understand what worship truly entails. Mr. Gu, who is still reeling from Mi Jong's passionate words about change and purpose. She believes he should worship her and abandon his drinking habits, but instead, Mr. Gu turns away, reminding her that she knows nothing about him. He seems perfectly content living alone in the countryside, cherishing his peaceful existence. Meanwhile, Mi Jong grapples with her own decisions. Reluctant to go home after her encounter with Mr. Gu, she chooses to hang out with her co-workers instead. Peer pressure kicks in, and she ends up missing the last train, finding herself alone and walking past some intimidating figures late at night. But just as things seem dicey, Mr. Gu shows up, staggering past with a bag of alcohol, providing a strange sense of safety. The next day at work, Mi-jong feels the weight of expectations as her colleagues pressure her to join a club. But deep down, she knows it's just another path to disappointment. The long, hot summer days make her mundane commute even more unbearable. There's nothing worse than a stuffy train with no air conditioning. Over in another corner of the city, Gi-jong is on a blind date, venting about her exhausting commute and her struggles to connect with anyone meaningful. The date takes an awkward turn when her date reveals he saved her number as pickup girl. Ouch. Ki-jong's brutally honest monologue about her ex leaves her date speechless, while Chang-hee, overhearing the exchange, suggests she just embrace being single. As tensions rise, Mi-jong receives encouragement to visit Mr. Gu, knowing he'll have alcohol to share. Du Huan reveals that Mr. Gu always drinks alone, but shifts where he sits and how many shot glasses he uses throughout the night. A peculiar ritual. Intrigued, Chang-hee decides to visit Mr. Gu, but leaves feeling deflated after a lackluster night. Meanwhile, Gi-yong musters the courage to confront her boss about the lack of attention and affection she receives compared to her colleagues. After an awkward but revealing conversation, they share a drink, and she lays bare her feelings of being overlooked, shattering her pride. On her train ride home, Gi-yong scoffs at a billboard promising that something good will happen today. Little does she know, she crosses paths with Chang-hee's ex, leading to realization that the situation is far from special. The next day, Gi-yong playfully interrogates Chang-hee about his encounter with Yerin, but he's convinced she's simply too good for him. However, her visit to Dangmi Station was purely out of curiosity. Chang-hee makes his way back to Mr. Gu's place, attempting to mend their past awkwardness, but as usual, Mr. Gu remains silent, shutting the door on their budding friendship as Chang-hee heads home to wash off the night's disappointments. Back at home, their parents return from a funeral, completely oblivious to the hard work and brutal commutes their children endure daily. But in a twist of fate, Mi-jong finds herself on the brink of making genuine friends at work, not the superficial types interested only in gossip. Together, they brainstorm a name for their new group, the Liberation Club, a fitting title for those seeking freedom from their mundane lives. As they leave work, a faint smile creeps across Mi Jong's face. Could this be the beginning of her rediscovery of purpose? Back at home, Mi Jong reaches out to Mr. Gu, asking if he wants her to worship him instead. He remains silent, but it's clear he's pondering her words. She suggests a simple greeting in the morning, and in a rare moment, Mr. Gu starts to open up. Baby steps. Mr. Gu joins Mi Jong and her family for dinner. Now, this is a big deal because her father, Yom Jeho, who rarely praises anyone besides his favorite daughter, Mi Jong, has been singing Mr. Gu's praises lately. But as the dinner unfolds, a bit of playful embarrassment from her father leads to an awkward moment between Gu and Mi Jong, leaving them to eat alone. But not for long. Just when things settle down, Gi Jong and Chang Hee storm in, heated and riled up. They had a run in that ended with Chang Hee lashing out. Classic sibling drama. The tension spills into the house and chaos ensues when a misplaced slipper flies through the air, accidentally hitting Mijong. Instead of retaliating, Mijong shows restraint, throwing the slipper outside instead. This moment highlights her effort to control her temper around Mr. Gu, which Chang Hee later points out. It seems our girl is trying to be the bigger person. When the conversation turns to Mr. Gu, he casually reveals he moved to this secluded neighborhood after getting off at the wrong stop. Is there more to his story? We'll have to keep watching to find out. Fast forward to work the next day, and things aren't looking great for Yom Jeho. A client rips into him, leaving Gu feeling the need to step in. After a brief confrontation, he drives home with a bag of alcohol, hinting at his struggles. Meanwhile, at Alpha Retail, rumors are spreading thanks to Arium, and Chang Hee finds himself in damage control mode. He's frustrated, believing Arium is sabotaging his chances for a promotion. When he takes a call from a store owner, tensions rise, especially with his father, leading to a heated exchange. Back at Mijong's workplace, news of the Liberation Club spreads like wildfire. Her colleagues are curious about its purpose, and Mijong boldly declares her desire to break free from her routine. It's a pivotal moment, showing her shifting mindset. As the day unfolds, Guiyong faces her own battles at work, enduring hurtful comments about her appearance. But a surprise visit from Jin Yu gives her a glimmer of hope. He hands her 10 lottery tickets, and their conversation about love sparks something in her. Guiyong's quest for beauty takes her to a plastic surgery clinic where she unexpectedly runs into an old schoolmate, Gyeong-sun. This encounter introduces Tai-hoon, Gyeong-sun's younger brother, igniting Guiyong's crush and leading to some flirtatious banter. As the night falls, a thunderstorm brews, and both Gu and Mijong find solace in the raging storm. When a blackout hits their neighborhood, Mijong insists on bringing Gu to safety, highlighting their budding connection and shared desire for something more meaningful in life. The next morning, Mr. Gu wakes up to chaos and a cut on his foot. A chance encounter with Mijong's father leads to an unexpected bonding moment over farm work. And just when you think things can't get any better, a gust of wind sends Mijong's hat flying. Mr. Gu, determined to keep his promise to her, makes a bold dash across the bridge, bad foot and all. It's a heartwarming moment that encapsulates their growing bond. It's a hot, sticky day when Mr. Gu takes a daring leap across a gap, effortlessly retrieving Mijong's sun hat. Talk about an absolute legend. But while Mijong admires his athleticism, Chang Hee watches, contemplating whether he should jump too. Spoiler alert, he chickens out, realizing just how wide that gap really is. Yet he can't help but admire Mr. Gu's Olympic level skills. Meanwhile, Gi-jong is going through surgery, but she's under strict orders to keep her face hidden from the sun. When Chang Hee and the guys see her, they're taken aback, wondering what she's done. I'm under construction, she quips, but Chang Hee can't shake off his fascination with Mr. Gu. He's convinced that Gu's leap was more than just a jump. He's pondering the symbolism behind it, calculating how many coins it would take to stack up to the summit of life. Yep, Chang Hee's mind is a whirlwind of theories, all while Gu just wants to chill. And then, the conversation shifts back to reality when Chang Hee's mom comes in with some harsh truths about adulthood. She reminds him that with age comes family and love, concepts he seems to dismiss. Their back and forth reveals some deep rooted issues, with Chang Hee insisting his mom's had her share of happiness, despite her nostalgic smiles at old photos. That night, Mi Jong is feeling down and trying to self affirm, I'm a great person. I won't ask to be loved. In a sweet gesture, she buys some soju for Mr. Gu, saving him a trip, of course. When she hands it over, she hints at their promise to become different people by spring, likening it to a leap of faith. Meanwhile, Gi-jong is still reeling from her breakup with Taehyun. She reaches out to Cho Gyong-seon about lottery tickets, but learns none were winners. It's a harsh reminder of her feelings of isolation. After a night out drinking, Gi-jong stumbles home, exhausted and wishing for a robot to wash her up, a clear glimpse into her desires. Now, let's jump back to Chang Hee and his friends at Alpha Retail. They're caught up in cryptocurrency talk, with dreams of big paydays floating around. Chang Hee is pushed to invest 10 million won. If only he had that kind of cash. As he venting about his chatty colleague A. Reum, Dayon is quietly amused, teasing him about his feelings towards her. This sparks a fun, flirty banter, and for the first time, Chang Hee seems to have a new purpose, something to think about on his train ride home. But despite the chemistry, Chang Hee's mind is clouded with thoughts of the future. He's not the type to offer Dayon a family, so he distracts himself with Sangmi's problems instead, while secretly dreaming of wealth and freedom. At work, the Liberation Club faces a challenge, defining what they do. This prompts Tai Hun to reflect on his father's journal, leading him to ask a poignant question: what does a man live for? It's a moment that gives him insight into his father's legacy. Later, Mi Jong catches Mr. Gu leaving work with 2 bottles of soju. Their conversation hints at something deeper as they navigate their lives. There's tension in the air, and it's clear they're both searching for connection. As they walk home, Gi Yong spots them together, and it's evident this secret isn't going to stay hidden for long. As Mi Jong and Gi Jong head home, Gi Jong can't shake off her thoughts about her sister's secretive relationship with Mr. Gu. It's clear she's curious, and the tension is thick. Ironically, Mi Jong snaps a photo of a billboard promising good fortune on her way to work. She sends it to Mr. Gu, looking for a bit of inspiration to uplift her day. At work, things get awkward when Mi Jong discovers her supposed friends printed plane tickets to Guam without inviting her. The exclusion creates palpable tension in the office. As the cliquey girls discuss it in the hallway, Mi Jong tries to shrug it off. At lunch, she quips to a colleague that they wouldn't invite her because she doesn't own a bikini, adding context to their previous swimwear chat. Meanwhile, Chang Hee is also feeling the heat at work. Desperate to get in his boss's good graces, he's tasked with securing a 5-year rental contract for a store owner who's looking to retire soon. The owner isn't interested in being tied down, leaving Chang Hee in a tough spot. He laments to himself that his friends lack the funds needed for the hefty 300 million won deposit. Later, when Chang Hee stops by Mr. Gu's, he's confronted with a room full of empty soju bottles. In a bid to help, he starts clearing them out, but Mr. Gu's hostile response sends him and Duhuan away. At home, Chang Hee discusses the store deposit with his parents, weighing the pros and cons. He tries to persuade his father to invest, but is met with resistance. His father won't object, but won't help either. To add insult to injury, Aram's family jumps at the opportunity and signs the lease before Chang Hee can act, deepening his frustrations. At the bank, impatience boils over as Chang Hee waits in line. When a man ahead of him asks to go first due to a bus, Chang Hee grits his teeth but lets him pass. However, he soon notices the man's account reveals he can't withdraw 50,000 won, giving Chang Hee a moment of perspective. Everyone has their struggles. Meanwhile, Gijong runs into Tai Hoon at a barbecue shop. They share a meaningful discussion about the power of apologies. Gijong seizes the moment to sincerely apologize for her previous remarks. At the same time, Mijong finds herself at a gathering with friends, but she's distracted, sending heartfelt messages to Mr. Gu about how much she loves communicating with him. In her drunken stupor, she even snaps a picture of his house, adding a playful layer to their relationship. Later, Mi Jong visits Mr. Gu, who admits he's fed up with the noise of people. They bond over their shared dislike for social interactions, revealing deeper layers of their personalities. In a sweet moment, Mr. Gu surprises her with ice cream he bought while drunk, admitting he feels more genuine when he drinks. It's a charming glimpse into his character. The next morning, Mr. Gu starts cleaning his place, even selling the empty bottles. He shows a more responsible side, tossing a couple of cans to Duhuan as a thank you. Later, he receives a message from Mijong with the photo she took of his house. They share a playful exchange, with Mijong admitting she finds joy in messaging him just as much as she does receiving her paycheck. That evening, they reconvene over drinks, with Mr. Gu revealing that during the winter, he locked himself away with bottles of soju, embodying isolation. Their light flirting signifies a blossoming connection. The following day, Chang Hee feels motivated to make a daring jump, hoping to mirror Mr. Gu's success, but naturally he falls short, adding to his mounting frustrations. Mr. Gu receives a cryptic message urging him to pick up his phone. It's time to move. and they don't need to hide anymore. But what are they hiding from, and where are they going? As the sweltering sun beats down, Gi-jong finds herself doing the laundry. But what catches her eye is her sister, Mi-jong, and Mr. Gu sharing a bottle of water. With a scoff, she playfully accuses them of being on a date. It's a hot day, but as night falls and the family gathers for dinner, Jae-ho can't help but question Mr. Gu about his refusal to accept payment for his work. I enjoy it, Gu replies, leaving a hint of mystery in the air. Meanwhile, Oh Do-hwan, a character who's been lingering in the background, finally steps into the spotlight. He learns from friends that Miss Kwak, his longtime crush, has broken up with her boyfriend. Over dinner with Chang-hee, he admits his heart raced at the news. Mi-jong, listening in, shares a surprising perspective. She's never felt her heart race with excitement, only with fear. For her, love feels more like freedom, but there's trouble brewing. Mi-jong's father discovers her secret. She's changed her address to Mr. Goose Place to hide her post. Jae-ho misinterprets the situation, believing things are getting serious between her and Gu. Tension thickens as Mi-jong, facing mounting pressure, has a meeting with the Liberation Club instead of dinner with Gu. Inside the club, Hyang-gi checks their notebooks, while Tae-hun writes, "Stop feeling weak." Outside, Gijong's crush on Tae-hun softens her initial hostility, prompting her to eavesdrop on his conversation about losing his parents, a moment that brings unexpected depth to their characters. The next day, Mi-jong faces her parents, who demand she revert her address. She tries to cover for herself, claiming she's helping a friend, but the stakes are high. When she reaches out to Chan Hyuk, his partner reveals they're barely scraping by. Mi-jong's financial woes deepen, and she worries her parents will find out the truth. Determined to maintain her facade, Mi-jong even spins a story about her request for Gu to worship her. This moment not only shocks Gi-jong but also marks a turning point for Mi-jong as she decides to shut her bank account prematurely, despite the bank worker's disappointment. Later, Gu receives a phone call from his brother revealing tensions in his own life. Just as we're about to uncover more, the scene cuts, leaving us in suspense about Gu's financial struggles. In a heartfelt moment on the bus, Mi-jong confides in Gu about her hopes for Chan Hyuk. Gu, ever the supportive figure, asks for Chan Hyuk's details so he can persuade him to pay her back. As they share a meal at Gu's place, an intimate exchange unfolds where Mi Jong encourages Gu to embrace his vulnerabilities around her, a beautiful step towards her gaining confidence. However, Gi Jong's journey is more tumultuous. Torn between her feelings for Taehyun and her self doubt, she receives advice from her boss to be honest about her emotions. But with Chang Hee discussing her behavior behind her back, she struggles to take the plunge. The next morning, Mr. Gu gives Mi-jong a ride to the train station, but Gi-jong insists on joining them. When Chang-hee notices their swift arrival, Gi-jong cleverly spins the narrative, hinting at a deeper connection. We start with Mi-jong at work, sharing her admiration for Mr. Gu with her coworkers. She poetically describes him as having no shell, meaning he's genuine and doesn't pretend to be someone he's not. Meanwhile, her superior Junho grumbles about her work performance, marking up her sheets in red. One co-worker suggests she talk to her boyfriend about it, to which Mi Jong responds, "I will do." Over with Gi-jong, she's still hung up on Taehyun, contemplating whether to message him. In a fumble, she accidentally sends an emoji with "I miss you." Panicking, she quickly deletes the message, claiming it was a mistake. Taehyun replies, "I wonder what it was," leaving Gi-jong flustered and fluttering with hope. As Gi-jong goes home, she jokingly asks Gu about his worship of Mi-jong, likening it to worshipping Hitler, an extreme comparison to say the least. That evening, Mi-jong stays late at work to fix her mistakes, imagining that Mr. Gu is working alongside her to make the tasks more bearable. In a surprising twist, he shows up at the cafe where she's working, sitting across the room, which makes her heart skip a beat. Meanwhile, Gu is at home, feeling anxious about Mi-jong's late shift. His constant phone checking leads him to pour himself a drink, highlighting his growing concern. The next day, while filling up his car at the petrol station, a shadowy figure in the car behind him seems to recognize him. This hints at a troubling past that's about to catch up with Gu. Back to Gijong, she excitedly prepares for her outing with Taehun to buy Nirvana's new album. They discuss music, and she even plays a record over the phone, leaving the store with a huge smile. Taehun thanks her and promises to treat her to dinner, fueling her hopes. Meanwhile, Duhwan is at school, contemplating confessing his feelings for Chang Hee. He concocts a wild plan involving a fake accident to explain a potential rejection. Gijong, overhearing, tentatively encourages him to try it out. At Joy, Mijong impresses her boss and is told to head home early. This victory means she can see Mr. Gu sooner. In a twist of fate, they bump into each other at the supermarket, where she shyly admits she almost hugged him, much to the intrigue of a watching shop assistant. However, Gu receives a worrying call from a contact in Seoul about Samsik, the figure who recognized him. It seems Beck, his former associate, is planning to ransack the area, hinting at trouble ahead. On her date with Taihon, Gijong gathers her courage to ask if he'd like to date casually. His surprised reaction leaves her feeling rejected, prompting her to hurriedly leave. In a moment of embarrassment, she enacts the memory loss plan, but it backfires. She ends up with a sprained hand and tears. Despite her heartbreak, Gijong starts to feel better after sharing her feelings with friends. As a rainbow appears in the sky, everyone marvels at its beauty. Chang Hee vows to get a promotion, and Taehan captures the moment in a photo while Gu and Mijong share a contemplative glance. The scene opens with Mr. Gu and Jae-ho moving furniture together. As they work, Mr. Gu's eyes catch a large billboard proclaiming, "Something good will happen to you today." This phrase lingers in his mind as he sets off to pick up Mi Jong from work that evening. As they walk together, Mi Jong comments on the changing seasons, noting the cool air settling in. This simple conversation reflects a deeper shift within her. Thanks to Mr. Gu's unwavering support, she's slowly coming out of her shell. She feels more lovable, speaks her mind freely, and is gaining newfound confidence. Meanwhile, we check in on Gijong, who's sporting a cast on her arm. She discusses her brother's situation with her boss, who admires her resilience despite her challenges. Gijong reflects on a sincere message from her boss, who apologizes for leading her on and offers to take her out for a meal, just as he promised. At Alpha Retail, tension mounts. Chang Hee, feeling overwhelmed and frustrated, snaps at Areum during a heated moment. He directly questions whether she likes him, given how often she follows him around. The office falls silent, the tension thick. Ironically, his friends later joke that a whopping 80% of his conversations revolve around Arium, highlighting the contradiction in his feelings. Chang Hee is conflicted, pondering whether his disdain for Arium stems from her wealth and privilege. This internal struggle adds layers to his character as he grapples with his feelings. In another part of town, Mr. Gu is approached by Sam Sik on the side of the road. Sam Sik berates him for seemingly showing no remorse over the death of his lover. This confrontation reveals the depth of Gu's emotional struggles and sets the stage for his character development. Back at home, Mijong breaks the news to her mother about her relationship with Mr. Gu. Predictably, her mother is shocked. Mijong then visits Gu, where he opens up about his past, sharing a haunting analogy about jumping off a cliff, illustrating how people often regret their actions too late. He reveals that the woman he loved needed therapy, but tragically took her own life. This backstory provides crucial context for Mr. Gu's emotional turmoil, prompting him to tell Mijong to stop idolizing him. In the aftermath, Mr. Gu begins drinking again, surrounded by empty bottles. One fateful night, when the power goes out, he grabs a knife in fear, only to discover it's Chung Hee, who just wants to use the bathroom. This moment is tense yet revealing. As the night unfolds, we flash back to a pivotal moment in Mr. Gu's past. He recalls stopping at Dangmi Station, contemplating whether to help a woman stuck with a man by the roadside. It turns out to be Mijong. In a twist of fate, she inadvertently saves his life from a planned attack by thugs, as he was meant to meet Samsik at Oido Station. In the present, Mijong spots Mr. Gu stumbling along the road. Concerned, she decides to get off the bus and follows him, setting the stage for an emotional encounter. We start off in the past, where we find Mr. Gu, or Jagyong, utterly exhausted from his constant battles with the chairman and his scheming subordinates. In a moment of vulnerability, he hangs up the phone and collapses against a phone booth. It's a poignant reminder of the stress he's been under. Fast forward to the present, and we see Mi Jong encountering a drunken Gu. He's stumbling around, and things take a dangerous turn when a pack of wild dogs looks ready to attack. But fear not. Mi Jong steps in, showcasing her bravery. However, Gu isn't grateful. He believes that for every misfortune she stops, a bigger one is looming. And that's something that terrifies him, though he can't deny Mi Jong's sharp instincts. Later, we find Gu collapsed on a bench, feeling low. Chang Hee arrives and lies opposite him, deciding to capture the moment with a photo, calling it a stargazing bestie moment. Mi Jong, watching from a distance, calls out for Chang Hee to get up. At Alpha Retail, tensions rise between A. Rheum and Chang Hee, leading their supervisor to split them up for their own good. But during the team dinner, they find themselves sitting next to each other, and the awkwardness is palpable. Chang Hee is trying to play nice, surprising his boss with his newfound civility. We soon discover why Chang Hee's behavior is changing. After a late night encounter, he can't believe Gu owns a Royce and a bidet. It turns out he sees Gu as a fallen but wealthy man, leading Chang Hee to adopt new habits to distract himself from his feelings toward Areum. Meanwhile, Gi Jong is encouraged by her boss, Jinu, to meet Tai Hun for some octopus. When she arrives, the nerves are real as they clink glasses for some soju bombs. But things take a sour turn when Gyeong Seon crashes their date, revealing it's Yurim's birthday and making it clear that Gi Jong isn't welcome. It's heartbreaking as she faces rejection once more. Things worsen when Mr. Park's girlfriend confronts Gi Jong at work, urging her to stop talking to him. However, a sweet gesture from Tae-hon, who sends her a photo of Nirvana's album cover and offers to take her out to eat, lightens her mood. In another twist, Mi-jong gives Gu some free alcohol from Chang-hee, but isn't happy about it. Gu, pushing her away, heads to see Mr. Beck, where he admits he feels like a dead man walking. He's at a crossroads, contemplating whether to return to his old life or fade into obscurity. Later, Gu meets Mi-jong, who asks for a lift home. They share a meal together, rekindling some of that earlier connection. After a cozy dinner, they head home, but not before Cheng Hee drops by Gu's place, desperate to know more about Gu's past and that mysterious car. Gu takes him to a parking lot where his car has been hidden. Chang Hee is utterly shocked and even gets to drive it home. It's a surreal moment that adds to the drama. With a time jump to New Year's Eve at the casino, where Mr. Gu oversees the celebrations. As the countdown begins, he steps outside, reflecting on Mi Jong's words about her dating history. Snow falls gently around him, symbolizing a fresh start. Chang Hee's friends can't help but speculate about her life with Gu. One friend marvels, Mi Jong's really struck gold, hasn't she? But while they're buzzing about her luck, Mi Jong herself is reluctant to dive into the city life, especially when Gi Jong seizes the opportunity to demand money from her. The tension between the sisters is palpable as Mi Jong stays silent, a testament to her complicated feelings. At work, Mi Jong faces her boss's cruel jabs about her appearance, which only adds to her frustration. The heat is stifling, and she feels overwhelmed. Even in the elevator, her boss scoffs at her idea of joining a liberation club, only to suggest a marathon club to one of her colleagues. It's clear he has no regard for her feelings. Mi Jong finds solace in her conversations with Mr. Gu, who humorously suggests inviting her boss to work in the fields, imagining the boss struggling in a completely different environment. As night falls, the two head out to the fields, and that's where the magic happens. There's a poetic moment involving scarecrows that reflects on life's deeper meanings, culminating in a sweet kiss between them. Mi Jong, giddy with butterflies, rushes home to get ready for bed. Meanwhile, Chang Hee is out drinking with Yong A, who flaunts her impressive bank balance of 500 million won. Chang Hee is taken aback and ends up drinking too much, resulting in an embarrassing moment that leaves him feeling out of place amidst the loud music and high end alcohol. Back at Mr. Gu's place, tension rises when he spots men lurking around his house, placing a bug under his van. He tries to discreetly remove it but gets caught when Mi Jong's father arrives the next morning. At work, Gi Jong has a breakthrough as she opens up to her boss about her feelings for Tae-hun. However, their planned dinner becomes a scramble when Tae-hun struggles to park his car, rushing back to the restaurant sweaty and flustered. Despite the chaos, the connection between them deepens. Meanwhile, Park Jin-yu's relationship takes a turn when he decides to break up with his girlfriend after realizing she doesn't trust him. His growth is evident during a lovely date with Gi Jong, though their moment is interrupted by Cho Gyong-seon, leading to some tension. Thankfully, Tae-hun manages to bring the focus back to their chemistry. A prominent theme this episode is loneliness and self-discovery, especially for Chang-hee, who becomes more introspective after spending time alone. His ex is surprised by his newfound maturity, highlighting the changes he's undergone. In a dramatic twist, Gu confronts the men watching him and discovers they're working for Chairman Shin, who wants him back in the fold. Gu, however, values his time with Mi Jong too much to rush back. The episode closes on a sweet note as Gu tells Mi Jong, I worship you, while they sit together by the shore, basking in the sunlight. We open with Gijong sporting a huge smile. It looks like her bond with Tae-hun is deepening as they've been messaging each other like crazy. Meanwhile, Mi-jong is out on a rather peculiar outing with Mr. Gu, casually sharing a story about a goat she befriended before it ended up as dinner. Delicious, right? Taehan returns from church, but it's clear that the tension with Gyeong-seon is far from over. Hoi-seon finally tells her to back off, showcasing some fierce loyalty to her friends. The underlying drama is centered on Yoo-rim, who's worried that Gijong marrying Tae-hun will pull her away from their close-knit circle. Later, Tae-hun and Mi-jong discuss family ties at work, revealing that she's been filled in on the relationship. Back at home, things take a dark turn for Mr. Gu when an old friend shows up at Jae-ho and Hae-suk's house. Gu tries to keep his cool while this guy warns him that Chairman Shin is coming after him, especially since he's got his eyes on Mi-jong. Tension is building, folks. Meanwhile, at work, the Liberation Club is coming together, so Hyang-gi reveals that her bright smile masks deeper struggles. The team welcomes her and sets some ground rules about honesty and emotional authenticity. Mi-jong is taken aback, realizing that Hyang-gi isn't as cheerful as she appears. Later, Gu and Mi-jong walk home together. They share a light moment, with Gu appreciating her newfound openness. On another front, Chang-hee has a date with the flirty Da-yeon, but his night takes a turn for the worse when his car gets stuck in a parking lot. To make matters worse, he messes up the taxi number, causing Da-yeon to leave without him. Ouch. At work, Aram continues to stir drama, adding to Chang-hee's woes, especially with car troubles. Tai-han discusses the challenges of dating someone with kids, but surprisingly, Gi-jong takes it all in stride. Flashbacks reveal that Tai-hun has shared his relationship news with Yol, highlighting how Gi-jong allows him to be his true self. Back at home, Jae-ho discovers that Chang-hee has been driving Gu's car, leading to a heated confrontation. Jae-ho is adamant about working for what you have, leading to an awkward dinner when Gu arrives. Mi-jong feels the tension and contemplates leaving the table, but is held back by her mother's look. Later, Gu learns that Chang-hee had the car fixed, prompting him to chase after him. The scene is almost comedic as Gu runs past fields and hills, but it quickly shifts as he decides to take drastic action. In a shocking turn, Gu orchestrates a police raid on the club looking for drugs, a decision that deeply affects his relationship with Mi-jong. As Gu heads home, Mi-jong processes the news, torn between her feelings for him and his past. She tells him, I'm not angry, I'm just sad, and promises to call, even if it's infrequently. Meanwhile, Jae-ho is left disappointed, losing a figure who had such a positive influence on him. The drama escalates in Seoul as police pursue Mr. Baek, who meets a gruesome fate in his escape. This heartbreaking moment culminates in Mi-jong's tears that night, but in a stark contrast, Gu attends Baek's funeral, almost laughing at the grim circumstances. We see Mi-jong reciting the Liberation Club mantra on her way to work, setting the stage for the challenges to come. In a future Seoul, where the stakes are higher than ever, Mr. Gu finds himself back in the city, weighed down by the burden of bad news. Today, he must face Chairman Shin. After a recent police incident, their secret chat rooms have been exposed, forcing them to declare their true income. Chairman Shin shrugs it off, suggesting they simply increase their per table charges. But the harsh reality is that the club is bleeding money, with sales reports showing a disturbing trend in the red. Overwhelmed by stress, Gu turns to alcohol, drowning his anxiety in soju and hard liquor. The club is in disarray, and in a fit of anger, he gathers all the managers to confront them about 1.2 million won in unpaid bills. His fury peaks when he discovers a customer ghosting them, leading him to take drastic measures. With newfound resolve, Mr. Gu arrives at the department store, forcing the woman to pay up. This ruthless side of him is a stark contrast to the man we've seen before, as he refuses to take nonsense from anyone. Amidst the chaos, he finds himself seated opposite a baby whose father is lost in the nightlife. When the mother arrives, a confrontation ensues, highlighting Gu's turbulent life. In a poignant moment, Gu calls out for Mijong, revealing his deep sense of loneliness. I want to go home, he confesses when asked what would make him happy. This small act of kindness allows him to return to the countryside, seeking solace. As Gu travels back, we rewind to catch up with the other characters. Mijong is diligently working but faces criticism for including the green card brochure in her proposal. Despite the setbacks, she enters a design contest, gaining confidence. Embracing her fears, she stands up to a wild dog, demonstrating her newfound courage and determination to face life head on. Meanwhile, Chang Hee is stuck in bed, feeling unappreciated after quitting his job. He expresses his desire for respect from his father, Jae-ho, who silently observes Chang Hee's struggles from a distance. Jae-ho, a hardworking man, reflects on missed moments with his son while the family faces ridicule from their neighbors. A competitive race escalates into chaos, leading to an accident that spills sweet potatoes everywhere, further humiliating them. Gijong, meanwhile, finds her voice, refusing to let Gyeongseon push her around. As she grows closer to Taehun, her mother Hye-suk remains intrusive, creating awkward moments. When Hye-suk hears of Mijong's previous distress over their family dog, she realizes the connection to Mr. Gu. As she reflects on this, Mijong wins her contest but is still torn up over her feelings for Gu. Time has passed, the kids have grown, and life has changed significantly. In a heartbreaking turn, we learn that Hyesuk passed away, reframing the earlier moments and highlighting Mijong's reflections on death. With renewed purpose, Mr. Gu steps forward, ready to seek out Mijong, as the echoes of their shared past call him home. As we find a family grappling with the heartbreaking loss of Hisuk, a beloved mother. Each member mourns in their own way. Jeho stands quietly, tears welling in his eyes, still reeling from the shock. Hisuk's physical presence may be gone, but the echoes of her life linger in the hearts and memories of those she left behind. Following the funeral, the family struggles to navigate their new reality. Chang Hee steps into the role of Gu Jr. at work, alongside Jeho, trying to find some semblance of normalcy. Mi Jong discusses her mother's urn with colleagues, still processing the whirlwind of events that led to Haye Suk's untimely passing, police inquiries and all. Gi Jong, meanwhile, feels a growing anger and frustration, caught in the emotional crossfire as her aunt begins reaching out. That night, she debates with her siblings whether they should move their mother's urn, grappling with the weight of their grief. In a heartfelt conversation, Chang Hee reflects on the futility of death with his friends. Du Huan lightens the mood with amusing stories about Hisuk, reminding them all that memories are a bittersweet solace in times of sorrow. But the stress begins to boil over for Mijong. In a moment of frustration, she calls out her boss for his affair, revealing that he saves her contact as temporary employee. This confrontation sends ripples through the office, forcing Mijong to confront her own feelings of betrayal and anger. Later that night, feeling low, Mijong attempts to reach out to Mr. Gu, but his number is out of service. She's been holding on to the knowledge of her boss's affair for too long, and it all comes to a head when she confronts Han Soo-jin, the other woman. Their encounter turns explosive, leading to a physical confrontation that leaves both women on shaky ground at work. Meanwhile, Gijong seeks solace with Taehon. Yet, amidst her playful demeanor, a heartfelt moment arises when Yu Rim asks if grown ups feel sad when their mothers pass away. Gijong's attempt to connect with Yu Rim is met with rejection, leaving her feeling more isolated. In a moment of vulnerability, she jokingly proposes marriage to Taihun, and to her surprise, he agrees. Later, Gijong confronts her sister about a bank loan sent to Chan Hyok, a decision she now regrets. Tension hangs in the air, underscoring the fractures in their familial bonds. As Chang Hee searches for a moment of happiness, he finds himself in the parking lot where Goo's car was parked. Desperate for a fleeting joy, he recalls the exhilaration of driving it. However, his dying friend's plea for happiness weighs heavily on him, pushing him to muster a smile. To lift their spirits, the four siblings head to the beach. Chang Hee makes an effort to lighten the mood, expressing his love for his father, a small yet significant step toward healing. As the story unfolds, we see Mr. Gu receiving Mi Jong's address, a crucial moment that sets the stage for a reunion. Finally, on a picturesque bridge, Mi Jong arrives to meet him, a smile brightening her face. They share a moment of connection, reflecting on the changes in each other's lives, like Mi Jong's new haircut. I missed you so much, he says, revealing his full name, Gu Jagyong. As Gu finally confirms his name, he and Mi Jong begin to reminisce about their past, reflecting on the simplicity of country life and how far they've come. Amidst their conversation, they bond over shared frustrations, how irritating people can be. This time, the setting shifts dramatically. The pair heads to Guangchang Market, enjoying shopping and savoring delicious food together. It's a breath of fresh air for both of them. But the moment is interrupted when Gu receives a call from Sam Sik, reminding him of a commitment he can't ignore. He leaves Mi Jong behind, heading to the club where chaos awaits. Remember that woman who didn't pay her bill? Well, she shows up, causing a scene that leaves Gu with a cut on his cheek. Furious, he discovers cash hidden under a sofa, revealing his manager's gambling addiction, a stark reminder of the mess he's entangled in. When Gu returns, Mi Jong notices how much he's changed since they first met that day. She encourages him to find just 5 minutes of joy each day, her way of coping with grief and the struggles of life. But both are grappling with their own demons. Mijong is still owed money from her ex, who's about to marry. When she confronts him, he berates her, leaving her feeling shattered and even leading to a moment of reckless frustration. On the brink of ruining his wedding, fate intervenes as Gu calls just in time, pulling her back from the edge and reminding her of the connection they share, a lifeline amidst her turmoil. After a heavy night of drinking, Mi Jong arrives at Gu's place, only to find it littered with empty soju bottles, a stark indicator of his struggles. She questions how he can live like this, but Gu brushes it off, his indifference masking deeper issues. Eventually, they end up sharing a bed, vulnerability spilling over as they face each other, a moment of solace amidst the chaos. Meanwhile, Gijong is navigating her own challenges with Taihun, who struggles with family expectations. Tensions rise as she refuses to attend church and becomes embroiled in family disputes over graduation photos, caught in the middle of their conflicts. During a meal, Gijong learns a lesson about aging from a group of 50-year-olds who share their own fears and insecurities. It's a humbling moment, forcing her to reconsider her youthful judgments. That night, while looking at a pregnancy test in the convenience store, she's caught off guard by Rim. Although she insists she's not pregnant, the encounter adds to the strain between them, prompting Taehan to invite her for dinner to discuss the tension. Meanwhile, Chang-hee steps into a new role, running the convenience store and showing compassion to his co-workers. He's even managed to pay off his loan, drawing strength from Gu's earlier wisdom about perseverance. Excited, he calls his father with the good news, but his father's dismissive response leaves him feeling deflated, a stark reminder of the strained family dynamic. In a painful twist, we see Hyunei leave Chang-hee once again, unable to break free from her toxic patterns. His facade of composure begins to crumble as he realizes he's stuck in a cycle of disappointment. Back at work, Gu faces the music as Chairman Shin confronts him about his recent behavior. The boss expresses concern over Gu's drinking and its impact on his work, urging him to seek help. Inspired by the conversation, Gu turns to Mijong, offering her a part time job, 10 sessions to talk and reconnect. It's clear that she might just be the support he needs to reclaim his life. As they return to Gu's apartment, warmth and laughter replace the earlier gloom. Gu opens up about his feelings for Mijong, sharing how much she means to him. Their closeness deepens, marking a beautiful turning point in their journey. Later during dinner, Taihun awkwardly acknowledges his mistake when he learns Gijong has had her period, realizing the family gossip has created unnecessary tension. Back at home, feeling the weight of the day, Gijong decides to cut her hair, an outward expression of her desire for change and growth. We open with Gijong heading out for a bite to eat, only to run into Taihun. Awkwardness fills the air as he notices her new haircut for the first time. His friends chime in, teasing him, but he stifles a smile, an indication of their unresolved feelings. Meanwhile, Mijong is about to meet the rest of the Liberation Club, where Sangmin reveals an exciting opportunity. A publisher is interested in their diaries. The idea of sharing their inner thoughts as office workers resonates with everyone, but Taehun is hesitant, feeling his diary is too personal. After a celebratory Happy New Year, Mijong encounters Mr. Gu. Earlier, Chairman Shin had ordered a shutdown at the club, but Gu chooses mercy over harshness, telling the gambler he'll be out if the revenue dips below 80 million won. Gu confides in Mijong, revealing the haunting sounds he hears, side effects of his drinking. He acknowledges that alcohol is both a friend and an enemy, but admits it's easier to drown his demons than face them sober. Later, Mi-jong runs into her ex, Chun-ho, but instead of confronting him, she heads to meet the Liberation Club. In a moment of unexpected kindness, she defends him against a woman he accidentally bumps into, which leads to a civil conversation outside. Chun-ho promises to wire her the money he owes, showing that kindness can sometimes pave the way to closure. Back in Seoul, family drama simmers as Gyeong-seon criticizes Gijong for skipping church, leading to a heartfelt discussion with Tae-hun. He reveals his deep-rooted depression, expressing relief when Gijong tells him she isn't pregnant. Despite his struggles, she vows to support him, hinting at a resilient bond. Later, Tae-hun gifts Gijong a rose, but the head snaps off, a poignant symbol of their fragile relationship. When Gijong messages him about his mismatched buttons, it leaves the door open for their future together, hinting that love may still blossom. Meanwhile, Chang-hee attends a lecture by chance and feels a pull towards a future in funeral direction, fate nudging him closer to his purpose. It's a moment of realization that sometimes life's direction can emerge from the unlikeliest of circumstances. Back at the club, Gu confronts the reality of Hyun's debts as loan sharks arrive to collect. Chaos erupts when Gu orders the shop closed, leading to a brawl. In the chaos, Hyun flees with the money, leaving Chunjai injured, a vivid illustration of the turmoil surrounding Gu's life. Through this whirlwind, Gu begins to embrace Mijong's advice about counting his seconds of joy. He drops a 500 won coin, watching it teeter on the edge of a drain, a powerful metaphor for his life hanging in the balance. In a moment of clarity, he decides to leave a bottle behind for a homeless person, symbolizing his commitment to change. As the series comes to a close, Mijong reflects on her liberation notes, acknowledging how they've shifted since meeting Gu. With a hopeful smile directed at the camera, she recognizes her worth and the love she has to offer. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I really appreciate your support and can't wait to share more with you. Until next time, take care and see you soon.